Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Goa Connect. In today's episode, we are dealing with a study report that is in public domain. And I have with me my guest for today, Aneesh Vijayan, Director of IDCG, Inside Development Consulting Group. Now, IDCG is a leading development sector consulting firm which has operations in India and the USA. He has more than 15 years of experience in advising partners, clients, governments in conceptualizing and executing several cutting-edge research projects in energy, environment and climate change, infrastructure development, skilling and livelihood. He specializes in monitoring, evaluation, social and market research focused on public development and regulatory reforms. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for
Uh,
having me.
Now, the reason why we are talking is because of this study report that you have done. Now, this report titled Economic and Environmental Impact of Diesel Gensets used by commercial and industrial units in Goa. Now, tell us about this report first, sir, and then we'll start the ball rolling.
Yeah. So, I mean, as it is very evident from the title itself,
Yeah.
in the report, what we have tried to do is to see what kind of an environmental and economic impact does usage of DG sets pose on the people of Goa. So, I mean, it is very evident. So, to understand the context, you need to know that Goa is a state with almost highest per capita electricity consumption.
Okay.
It is a state which has a floating population of almost 10 times of its resident population. So, which is, and it is a state which also has, a per capita diesel consumption, which is almost 3 times the national average. So, I mean, it is very easy to attribute, that all these, the numbers that we see is kind of a function of this floating population that we have. With this floating population and the growing industrial, industries in the state, we thought of, going into a deep and trying to understand what is the current electricity availability scenario in the state and how does that, impact the people by and large.
Okay. Now in Goa, we have SMEs, we have MSMEs, then we have large industries which are placed in all these industrial estates that we have across Goa. Now we also are, a tourism-related state. A lot of people, as you mentioned, a lot of floating population who visit Goa for touristic activities. Now, obviously, the hotels are also involved. There are a lot of events that otherwise also happen in Goa. Now, I just want to understand is when you did this report, which are the biggest sectors being affected due to this outage? And obviously, can you come down on a number maybe so that my viewers can relate to?
Yep. See, as we understand, there is definitely a mismatch between the power available to the state and the demand
requirement.
In the state. So which are required. So obviously, because of that mismatch, there are issues of outages. These outages are not just because of the power mismatch. The power mismatch plus there are other issues of infrastructure available for distribution. There, as it seems, Goa is also under the process of currently laying underground cables. Those kind of disruptions are there, and some other kind of regular maintenance disruptions are there. So all put together, people by and large, both the domestic sector as well as the industrial sector is facing outages on and off. And if we talk about the sector which is getting impacted the most is the industrial and the commercial establishments which are getting impacted the most. If you look at the total power available to the state, almost 70% of that is being utilized by the industrial and the commercial establishment. The remaining 30% is used by the domestic consumers. So obviously the impact is higher on the other side where we have the commercial and the industrial establishments. Almost 87%, businesses in Goa are facing some power outages related issues. I mean, if I say it, 7 out of 10 industrial bodies or commercial bodies are facing this. So, I mean, that is the sector which is, getting impacted the most. And with this sector, we looked at a cross section of commercial and industrial establishments in the as part of our survey. So we surveyed some large hotels, small hotels. We surveyed large industries, small industries, small industries. We surveyed, small commercial establishments like offices. We also went to government offices, colleges, health establishments, and some people involved in cold storage, fisheries, and other sectors. We went to hotels, restaurants, shacks, which is lifeline of Kolkata.
Yeah.
So in this cross section, if you look at the top people, I mean, who are getting the most impacted is the large scale industries and the large hotels. So
Correct.
they are the ones who are, at the receiving end,
Hmm.
because they need power almost 24/7,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
they don't have an option to downsize their,
Very true.
options with every outage.
Hmm.
So yeah, they are the ones who are suffering the most.
See, when we say, impacting business houses, like for example, as you mentioned, it is commercial, it is, the industrial establishments that we have, or maybe the tourism sector, hospitality industry that is impacting. When, you might have a lot of stories, you've met all the sectors of the business houses that run here in Goa. How do you analyze this so that my viewers can understand the kind of problem that we're dealing, because in Goa you have a commercial which is charged on a higher side, whereas domestic is at a lower end. When it comes to power outage, the commercial is something that people face for, or maybe industrial requirement. I just want to understand how this power outage hamper, so that all the industrial units or commercial units are shifting, or maybe are dependent on the DG services.
Yes. So, I mean, as you very rightly pointed out, and the commercial establishment, the industrial ones are the ones who are paying more for the power. They are the ones who need more power. But at the end of the day, some of these impacts that they are facing, I mean, they are the ones on the receiving end as
Yeah.
well. So, if I tell you, I mean, based on the survey results that we have got, almost, I mean, if you look at the large hotels, they end up paying almost 35,000 rupees per, unit, or maybe sorry, per hour of power usage, if they are generating that power from a DG genset. If they don't get grid electricity, they use the DG genset, and if they use the DG genset, they're almost spending 35,000 rupees per hour. So you can imagine how big that amount is. And if you look at in terms of what proportion of what times it is, so people may end up paying even up to 16 times. So if I'm paying 8 rupees per unit, I may pay 16 times of that. I use the same amount of energy through my diesel genset. So
Okay.
that is the level of dependence. Again, this is a number that I'm talking. I mean, on a range or in a particular higher number. So depending on the size and scale of the unit, these numbers could differ. But yeah, the bottom line is that it is significantly higher as compared to grid power which is available.
Okay, Anish, my one straight short question
Yeah.
is
One more
is
thing
yeah.
I wanted to add
Yeah.
here, because of this additional expenditure that the commercial and the industrial establishments are making. These are essentially profit-making organizations. So with every additional expenditure, their profitability, their
Reduces.
standing in the market is going down.
Correct.
So, I mean, as a Goan enterprise, as a Goan business, their standing in the domestic market, their standing in the international market is getting impacted because of this. Because every additional money spent on production will have an impact on the output. I mean, will have an impact on the final product. So that has a huge impact on their, services or the product that they are offering.
Okay, correct. Anish, my straight short question is, you have to balance both economics as well as, populism. Now, understanding, environment is a very important part in everybody. Everybody is concerned about environment. But when you have such kind of things where there is less power, you have power outages basically, then you are dependent on DG services. Now, DG services, obviously, your diesel generator impacts your environment. And it is maybe, subconsciously we are we are damaging the environment. If you can just break it down and make me understand the kind of impact that all the commercial outlets have been doing, the damage for the last so many years, being dependent on DG services.
Yep. See, I mean, I would put it the other way around. It is not a direct, I mean, it is not a willful damage, I would say, because they need power. If the power is not available,
Very
obviously
true.
they want to fall back to DG sets. So that
Correct.
is only alternate available as of now. So that is why they are using it.
Yeah.
But obviously that has its own, as I said, talked about the commercial impact. It has also has the environmental impact on it. So with the usage of DG sets, you are emitting CO2 and other,
Correct.
gases into the air, and that definitely has a, impact on people's health. So if you look at it, almost 15% deaths in the country can be attributed to air pollution.
Okay.
This, as per one of the leading
Surveys.
national surveys that points out. So obviously, I mean, with every hour of usage, we are contributing to the air pollution. And secondly, I mean, as I said, Goa is a place where we have a per capita diesel consumption which is almost 3 times of the average, national
Hmm.
average,
Hmm.
is which can be attributed to a lot of tourist footfall in the
Hmm.
state. So
Hmm.
with that consumption on the higher side, with that emission on the higher side, if we have emissions from these DG sets also,
Hmm.
that cumulatively, if you look at it, it has a major impact going forward. So there's this National Clean Energy Program of Government of
Correct.
India, which has actually identified diesel generators as a major source of pollution
Pollution. Hmm.
in the Indian cities.
Hmm.
So that's, I mean, this is also one of the reasons that we wanted to do this study
Hmm.
to how it comes out. And if I tell you a very interesting figure, I mean, based on our study, we have found out that almost 1.8 million tons of CO2
Hmm.
is being emitted by these DG sets
Hmm.
into the environment of Goa.
Hmm.
And we would almost need 86 million trees
Hmm.
to absorb the CO2
Hmm.
in a year.
Okay.
So that is, that is how you can imagine, how.
My last question to you is now this report is in public domain. I want to understand is how can the government of the day or maybe the authorities take it and maybe learn something and try to incorporate policy decisions which will have less impact and obviously maybe have a reaping benefits over a course of time.
Mhm. Okay, so if you say understand, I mean, by starting this interview, I talked about the total demand in the state. So the total demand in the state is about 595 megawatt
Hmm.
against the total demand of about 625 megawatt. And according to a report by Central Electricity Authority (CEA) published in 2019, the peak demand is expected to almost double in the next 15 years.
Hmm.
Okay, and then you have a huge revolution which is going on in the electric vehicle, segment, where we are
Hmm.
coming. Government is promoting electric cars, electric scooters.
True.
And I'm sure you must be aware that Ola is coming out with this electric
Yeah.
scooter, and in Goa you have a huge business where people rent out bikes and cars and other things.
Hmm.
I'm sure uptake of these scooters is going to be very much, and it's going to be high in Goa.
Hmm.
So where do we have the energy to, use and to, charge them?
Hmm.
So, I mean, if you look at it, if I'm saying in the next 15 years, the peak demand is going to double.
Hmm.
With the interventions, it's going to, maybe go further up.
Hmm.
So the state needs to, work towards having policies,
Hmm.
having measures which could help in bridging this demand and supply
Hmm.
gap. Needs more investments on strengthening its transmission and distribution infrastructure, which I'm sure the state is already doing.
Hmm.
We needs policies for promotion of renewable energy in the
Hmm.
state. There is an open access policy available for the state. Which I'm not sure. Awareness among people or usage of that policy per se is not. We didn't see much evidence to that in our survey.
Hmm.
I think people need to be made more aware about it.
Hmm.
And even if we have to make a benefit from the open access policy available for the state,
Hmm.
we need to have good and reliable power distribution and transmission infrastructure in place. So with all that put together and little focus on renewable energy, including rooftops,
Hmm.
solar rooftop,
Hmm.
and net metering and all, I think the state would be in a better position to meet its upcoming demand.
I think you have nicely
In a
summarized.
very environmental friendly manner.
Very true. You have nicely summarized, sir. Every in India and the entire world is saying electric mobility is the future. Maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, obviously this transition will happen. Everybody is thinking about environment and obviously the cost per kilometer or stuff like that. So everybody is interested in going the EV mode. But do we have the infrastructure with us? Is the big question to be answered. I think as of now, Goa has to think over such kind of surveys, such kind of reports, and make policy decisions which will help us transition better and more comfortably. I think Aneesh, thank you very much for joining on this very special program and sharing your valuable thoughts.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
We had Aneesh joining us from Delhi and sharing his thoughts on the study report that was economic and environmental impact of diesel gensets used by commercial and industrial units here in Goa. You don't go away. Keep watching Prudent.